So what are the two bills that we're going to be talking about today? Well, this is from fedsmith.com. Now, FedSmith, there's a lot of great information. FedSmith, as well as some other websites, give you information on benefits, pay, some updates on policies, just what's going on in the world for federal employees. And the title of this recent article said, pair of bills would slash pay for over 1 million federal employees. This is on fedsmith.com. I've got the link here at the bottom. If you want to see it, you can certainly type this into Google. Want to give them credit, obviously, for this information in this article that I'm sharing with you today. Pair of bills would slash pay for over 1 million federal employees. Now, how many federal employees are there out there? There's 2.5 million federal employees. So there's a lot of federal employees that could be hurt by this. What are they? Well, here's the first one. The first one of the two, now this is the one that's going to more affect people out there than the second one. So I want to harp on this one a little bit, but this is called the Federal Employee Return to Work Act. It was introduced by Senator Bill Cassidy out of Louisiana. But what does it target? What does it target? You can read up on this. Again, this is just a high-level highlights here. Here's 3 highlights. It targets those that work from home, telework employees. So it targets telework and locality pay. Now, what does this say? This says employees that are teleworking should not be getting locality pay because they're not going into that location. Now, in some ways, I can agree with what's going on. In some ways, I can disagree. Just important to note also that not all employees are subject to this. So who's considered an employee? It's somebody that who teleworks not fewer than 1 day, right? Or not less than 20% of the week, 5-day week. So if you work more than 1 day telework, if you're you can be affected by this. Now, who is excluded from this? Just want to say this at the beginning. Those that are disabled, those that are part of the Foreign Service, member of the Foreign Service of the United States, federal law enforcement officers, members of the armed forces are on active duty. Those are excluded from this. Okay. And just making sure that we understand, you want to dive deeper into this to see if you're affected or not, but it would exclude employees who telework at least 1 day a week from raises and higher locality pay. Higher locality pay. Basically, they're saying you're working from home, you don't have to commute to this place. And there are some people that are claiming they work at a certain location and receive locality pay and are nowhere near that location because they're working from home. Maybe they've moved out of that zone or they're in a different place, but their home office, so to speak, and they're teleworking is in a different place. So there is some accountability on there for the employee if you're not reporting properly. But let's say you are in that area and you're just teleworking and you live in that area and you should get locality pay. In my opinion, if you're in that area, you're living in that area, maybe you're not commuting to the office every single day. I would feel for the government in this if there was somebody that was claiming to be, let's just say, Los Angeles, California, very high locality pay, and you lived in a different place. You lived in Boise, Idaho, not as high a locality, but you claimed and got, because you were teleworking, Los Angeles, that office. I can understand that. But it's a proposed bill. Again, it could affect millions of federal employees. It said over 1 million federal employees can be affected by this. If you're teleworking and considered a telework employee and you may not get locality pay, this would affect everybody, right? It's not just the one-offs that are maybe taking advantage of the system. It would affect everybody because telework employees would not be covered by locality pay. So employees covered under the bill would be paid at the rest of the United States rate, because you can go on to the GS pay scale and you can see all the different localities based upon areas. And then there's a catch-all rest of the United States locality adjustment, which is not as high as some of the major cities, metropolitan areas that do get a very significant bump because of the location of where they work. So just understand that if you telework more than 1 day each week on average, you can be affected by this if this bill goes through. This was, again, proposed. So just be aware of what's going on and the nature of the bill. You can look at the bill online, you can search it up, and you can read the bill that was submitted so that you understand this is just a very high level view of this new piece of legislation so you can understand, again, if you're potentially affected by it and how it may affect you going forward if it were to pass. They said it would start, if it passed, at the beginning of the fiscal year. And that way, those that are within this area or within this segment of the workforce would be affected. Now, what would this do? This would save money in what's being paid out. I think those that are negatively affected are the ones that are doing it right, the ones that are actually living in those areas and they're just happen to be teleworking, because your cost of living, if you're living in that area, is still high. It doesn't, just because you don't have a commute doesn't mean you're not living in that area and seeing the cost of living adjustment or the cost of actual living being as high. I think this is really where this came from is based on the folks that are claiming a certain area but living in a different area. Because they're teleworking, it doesn't make a difference. They're just claiming a certain office where they're getting a higher locality pay and living wherever because they're teleworking, right? They're not actually in that area and experiencing that cost of living adjustment because, of where they live. So hopefully that part makes sense, and it would just be a catch-all blanket for everybody. They're not excluding just the ones that are taking advantage of the system. This would affect everybody.